I want to go across to Daniel Bordman at the National Telegraph. How is this playing out in Canada? What is it about Justin Trudeau which doesn't see him acknowledging the threat posed by harboring terrorists? This is almost as if Canada becoming the new Pakistan, despite knowing the dangers of these gangsters, these mobsters to Canada and to the relations with India. He simply is doubling down. Is this just down to his domestic politics in your view?
Yeah, there's some domestic politics coming down here, and I can understand why India is quite frustrated with our prime minister. On the acquiescence to terrorism thing, I understand where India is on the Khalistani issue. Let me just give some context on Justin Trudeau. Last couple years. You might remember ISIS, the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, who went around murdering, pillaging, enslaving. Well, when they were coming back to Canada and being defeated, the Conservative Party raised concerns about returning ISIS fighters. Thought it was a bad thing. Justin Trudeau got up in Parliament and stated proudly, that's Islamophobia. And, quote, the returning ISIS fighters can be a powerful voice for de-radicalization. So Justin Trudeau's a leader, and Canada's a country, where our plan to fight radicalism is literal ISIS fighters. And the way we're going to de-radicalize them was with poetry. That was literally in the government's de-radicalization handbook. So we're going to use poetry and ISIS fighters to combat terrorism. This is Justin Trudeau's Canada. So yeah, the Khalistani movement's been allowed to fester here since 1985, and when they blew up the Air India 182. And we like to dick our heads in the sand. The trial was an absolute miscarriage of justice. It was a catastrophe. Things were lost. Affidavits were thrown out due to political assassinations that should never have been thrown out. And only one guy ended up getting arrested and the rest got off scot-free. And they went on to grow the Khalistani movement, which has festered. As we said, we've ignored when they got on TV and said, Hindus, kill, kill, kill. And we just ignored. And then it is now manifested in this massive geopolitical conflict that we've gotten ourselves into, where we have the leader of the third party propping up the government. We're in a coalition, sort of, by not name. He's openly aligned kind of with the Khalistani movement. Took him 3 tries, took Jagmeet Singh 3 tries to say that blowing up an airplane was terrorism, bad, and not a conspiracy done by the Indian government. So this is like the second most powerful man in the country. And then you have Justin Trudeau.
No, but outside what the Justin Trudeau government is doing, Daniel, how is this being looked at by normal Canadians? Do they support the Trudeau government, or are they just tearing their hair apart and saying, don't you see the risk of supporting terrorists?
So, again, the Canadian media landscape it doesn't like to talk about these issues. So a lot of Canadians are not even aware of the Khalistan thing, are just waking up to it and wondering what's going on. The media is portraying Najjar as Sikh religious leader. That's his official title in Canadian media. The allegations, the videos of him with AK-47s, those don't make it into Canadian media. It's just the pretty much the 75% of what goes through our mainstream media is kind of liberal government press releases by proxy. So to not see the danger in Canada, it can be understood. But Canadians are starting to wake up to this story because it's affecting them. The visas is a massive bloody nose to Canada. Canadians like to be seen as the reasonable younger brother to Americans where nothing bad ever happens and we're all very reasonable. Canadian society, let's say the elites, the upper middle class, they get really riled up when international media starts to cover Canada in a negative light. This is when they panic. So now that something actually is manifested, visas are being suspended, there's going to be real world consequences. People who have Indian friends, which is everyone in a metropolitan city in Canada, they're going to start to hear about it in their lives. They're not going to like it. So it's morning, it just started, but this is now huge news in Canada. It's going up. And this will hurt Justin Trudeau, but he's so unpopular. He was at lowest popularity, 15 points underwater. The NDP is also collapsing. So he has this cult of personality left to support him, and they'll support him no matter what. So he was under fire for the Chinese foreign interference and the CCP, helping out the Liberal Party get elected. And, that might have taken him down. So he starts a brand new controversy by picking a fight with India. I'd say single-handedly, but maybe it's 2 of them. It's Justin and Jagmeet. It's 2 people versus the 1 billion plus people in India. And it's not going to go well for them. Canadians are not going to like this. We like being seen as a friendly country that gets along with everyone, and there's no problems here. We love maintaining that image. And when that image is threatened, Canadian society wakes up and then goes into self-correct mode. So I would expect the rhetoric in Canadian media to start to change over the next few days now that the average Canadian actually wants to know something about this story. It's affected them. So I went on from the beginning. I said, like, there's no game theory win scenario I can even fathom for Canada.
Okay.
By the way.
So, Veena Sikri, is Justin Trudeau just irritated with the way the Delhi trip went? His plane got stuck. He had to stay for a day and a half longer than he wanted to. Because between friendly countries, you don't typically name an officer, call him out as the raw station chief, ask him to go back. Even if you do it without naming and wanting to publicly shame someone. This is not, I mean, if this was, say, Pakistan or China, it would be slightly believable, but not between friends. Why do you think, in all your years of diplomatic experience, why do you think Trudeau is acting so peevishly?
I think Trudeau is under great political pressure within Canada, as has just been mentioned by Daniel Bordman. His popularity ratings are all-time low, and he's facing great pressure from his pro-Khalistani member of his political alliance. Now, I think what the Khalistani group wants to do is by all means keep up international viewership for the Khalistani issue. But I think it is quite out of character for any country and unacceptable for any country to make that statement in Parliament with no evidence at all. You're saying credible allegations of a potential link and you call that evidence? I mean, this is absolutely unheard of in diplomatic parlance, where you actually are willing to bury your bilateral relations with that country for your own domestic considerations. And I think this is not a one-off issue, as Pramit has mentioned. I think the Canadian views on the Khalistanis go back to 1985, the Kanishka bombing, and after. Red corner notices approved by Interpol have been given to the Canadian government over the years about various Khalistani separatist and extremist activity in Canada. They have taken no notice of it. They've been ignoring it all the time.
What do you think will happen next? Is Canada likely to retaliate? Will they also stop granting visas to Indians? Because that's what people who are watching at this moment are maximum concerned about.
Well, they might well do that. They might stop the functioning of their visa section as well. There is also something that our spokesman said today, that the size of the Canadian High Commission in Delhi is much bigger than the size of the Indian High Commission in Ottawa. So maybe there'll be a call for a parity there. I think it's something very clear that India cannot be accused like this without any serious evidence. And all the other countries, UK action was taken, the Khalistanis acted, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak gave a strong statement. USA, the Khalistanis acted, there was a strong statement. Why in Canada, when their own Quebecois separatists are, slammed down immediately, when the truck drivers are slammed down immediately? For the Khalistanis, it's freedom of expression, it's freedom of conscience. This is a completely different treatment. And Hindu temples, even today, Hindu temples are being attacked, and this is being allowed. That, places of worship of a certain community are being crashed. Why? Graffiti is being issued. Why? It's being tolerated. Why? It's inexplicable, and there has to be a serious explanation, or this will continue. There is no way in which the Indian government, which has so far taken a correct and justified stand on the absolutely false allegations made by Justin Trudeau and his government, India cannot continue this to the logical conclusion unless Canada sees the wrong of what is done and retracts.